On February 26, 2003, my family left for a Florida vacation. Because there were four of us, my parents decided that we would drive rather than fly because it was both cheaper and more practical. Looking back, I have to wonder, what were my parents thinking taking two small children on a 22-hour car ride? At this time, I was 7 and my sister was 10. The drive was tedious and very uncomfortable. I mean, most vehicles, including ours, are designed to comfortably fit 5 people, but I doubt they considered having two young, energetic children in the back seat. Needless to say, the ride drove all of us to our very last nerves. As it neared dark, we reached the Carolinas, which were essentially a halfway milestone on our trip. My parents started to hear storm warnings all over the radio. Now, normally no one really takes these type of warnings very seriously. We all have that "it will never happen to me" type attitude. But this time it was different. Before we knew it, traffic started slowing down to the point where people were going near 20 miles per hour on the interstate. We weren't really quite sure why, but we just figured it was an accident ahead. Eventually, we came to a complete stop. Then it started hailing. That was the first time I had ever seen hail. The hail was about the size of bouncy balls, bouncing off the cars, making loud thud noises. The hail didn't last for that long, maybe 3 minutes at most. When the hail stopped, I figured the storm had just passed over us. Little did I know that was just a warning to the actual storm. Across the fields to the right of me, I could see a tornado forming. The realization of what was happening around me was finally settling in. Luckily, the tornado only managed to touch down for a few minutes before breaking apart, as it was only 6 miles away from us. In the midst of the havoc from the storm, a semi-trailer somehow drove off the road a few miles ahead of us. We weren't going anywhere for a couple of hours. The trip seemed like it was going to be absolutely terrible. We were actually considering just turning around when we were finally able to start moving again. We were miserable, hot in a cramped car, arguing over every little thing. Around 4 hours after the initial stop, traffic slowly started to start back up, which essentially turned our 22-hour trip into a 26-hour trip. This forced us to pull over and stop for the night. The next day was a little better. Everybody was still all cramped, and all I wanted was for the trip to be over already. But then we finally got to Florida. The moment we got there, it felt like the incident that happened the day before happened forever ago. Everything got a little better, and everyone's happiness was restored. But we still had 2 more hours until we reached Orlando. Those 2 hours flew by, and before I knew it, we were at our resort, which seemed more like a park than a place people would stay. The resort was awesome, though. We had to cancel our plans for the day because we didn't arrive until around 4 p.m., but just relaxing at the resort made that long road trip worth it. There were water slides, a lazy river, and even a couple of pools. Throughout the week, we went to SeaWorld, Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, and even a couple of water parks. The vacation was fun. It was way better than I'd expected after the horrible car ride to get there. I was happy to have gone on the vacation, and now I was happy to go home. But we had one more obstacle to overcome before we were home: the car ride back home.